All right, what's this episode about? Happy Monday, folks. What's going on? Day in the life of music.
Stuck with it.
I like that title, I think. Are we already at episode?
I was walking
This
my
is the
dog.
Monday series
to all four of our
shows that I'm doing. It's not
like back to back.
really a podcast.
And I called you and I'm like, this is the raddest EP ever. We have to do it. And we did. So that was yay for us.
How we doing, folks? Happy Monday. Good to see ya. If you're returning, it's great to have you back. If you're not returning, this is your first time, well, I do these every Monday. Some of these are about music that I'm producing. Some of these are about my friends that I, want to introduce you to. What'd you think of that intro? I just threw that thing together out of some footage, obviously, and a song that I have, but thought it might be worth putting an intro together for this whole thing because, why not? Anyway, today is an interview with Shane Alexander. Shane is a good friend of mine. He helped me to produce an EP that I'm going to be trickling out over the next couple of months. You'll be hearing more about that soon. But today we're going to talk about and discuss his latest project, what inspires him, family, going on tour, doing all kinds of different things. As a musician, he's been doing this professionally for a long time, longer than I have. I just really respect the guy greatly. Being, a dad and being a professional in this industry, having his own studio, those are all things that I think we all kind of aspire to, and also that we don't get to get the inside look at all the time. So this is a great interview for people that might be looking to build their own business out of their own studio, or people that just want to know more about how the inside of the industry works, as are most of these interviews. But today in particular, if you're a fan of music, you're a fan of independent Americana music, Shane is a phenomenal songwriter. There's a reason that I chose to work with him on my last EP, and he's got a fantastic studio called Buddhaland out in Thousand Oaks. It's Westlake Village. He corrects me in the interview. It's Westlake Village, sorry. The bonus episode for today is another brief interview with Shane Alexander. Really what we're doing is we're talking about producing the record together. We've got the best musicians we could possibly get our hands on for that specific weekend. It was an incredible whirlwind of an adventure. I lost my voice. It was supposed to be 2 days. It turned into 3 days. It's a whole thing. It's pretty cool. So check out that bonus episode. All you gotta do is subscribe at Substack. As of today, I've killed Patreon and I've just moved everybody over to Substack. And I hope you'll join me there. Catch those bonus episodes. If you feel like paying $5 a month, you can also get the songs that I'm producing in these episodes, pre-releases of the songs in the EP. It's gonna be great. So join, subscribe, do the thing. Let's jump right into this interview with Shane Alexander. Thank you for watching.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you just put out a record. Let's talk about that.
Well, yeah, I did. It's my 8th record. It's called Forever Songs. And I always say the title is a bit of a double entendre because it took me a couple of years from basic tracks to releasing because I was producing a lot of other artists in the interim, yourself included,
right?
Which took a lot of my RAM. And so it ended up really being a gift because I was saying it's a double entendre. It's a double entendre because it took a while and because I'm trying to write enduring classics, obviously. But it ended up really being a gift because I was able to come back to it with really fresh perspective.
Yeah.
And sort of eventually land the plane. And, I had a publicist in Europe and a few people that were really up my butt about when's it coming? And I'm like, I'm autonomous. It's coming when it's done, it's coming when it's great. And so I'm really pleased with it. The response has been really great. The NPR featured it, which was a gift. Yeah. And we did just have the record release a couple of weeks ago in Malibu, which was a long time coming. And that was really a big victory too. That had a lot of moving parts. And to finally have that behind me was a beautiful thing. It took me like 3 days to come down from the adrenaline boost of pulling it off, but we did. It was great.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. New drummer, new guitar player. So that, a lot of moving parts, a lot of ways, the wheels could have come off the car, but the spirits were with us, the crowd was with us. And it also was the first time I properly stood up the tunes. So my last couple songs of the show, we had 9 people on stage. I had 4 backup singer girls and a 5-piece band, and that just felt really, really exciting. And so, it's, at this late date, this being my 8th record, my whole ethos is just simply to serve the muse and honor the music that's trying to come out, and everything else, the chips fall where they will. But I just want to make music that I believe in, and that is very freeing. And so also, I've got my next record queued up. I'm going to start recording that this month as well. So I'm a crazy person. Yeah.
I want to ask you about that. Who did you have? So did you get any of the people from that were actually on the recording to play with you, or is it? You said it was totally new.
Vic Ruiz has been playing bass with me for about 12 years. He's from Mexico City. He's amazing. His dad just passed away in his 80s, but he was a very accomplished bass player down in Mexico City. Stylish, badass guy. And Vic was wearing some of his boots at the show the other night. Yeah. Carl Byron's been playing piano with me. He's played on a number of records I've produced, and he's been playing with me, I guess, about 10 years as well. Jamie Drake sang on the show. She sang on my last 3 or 4 records. And then I had a new friend, Devin Geyer, who was doing electric and acoustic and harmonies, and then a new drummer, Luke Fisher, who did really, really great too. And I'm such a stickler. Drums are tough.
Right.
You can live or die by drums. And he put up with my idiosyncratic ways, and we had a really beautiful show. So it was really gratifying. And now I feel like, my drummer, Fern Sanchez, he moved to Florida, and I was so in love with him. And again, he was on a bunch of records that I produced, and he just sort of understood my brain. So when he left, I was sort of despondent and had a few interim drummers, but I think Luke is probably going to secure the position for going forward here.
Good. Yeah, he's local where you are.
Yeah, and he's worked with my bass player, Vic, for a couple of years on other projects. So they came in sort of already as a rhythm section. So
yeah.
Total win. Yeah.
Yeah, and as long as he's got those mojo boots on, that rhythm section is going to be just fine.
That's the thing. And also he's really good. I always want symphonic drumming. I just want it all. Just like I want to do rock stuff, but if we're Paul Simon's band and I want to go world music or symphonic or whatever, I just want the answer to always be yes.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Just like, Rob, who played on your record,
right.
He's such a wonderful percussionist, and again, just whatever the song calls for, whatever we can throw at him, the answer is yes. That's always what I'm looking for.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's a reciprocal quality. I mean, when we were in the studio, I remember I love that phrase. That was your answer for everything. Whenever somebody asked for something, you're just like, yes, of course. And the answer is always yes.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
we just want
great.
to serve music. Yeah, it's just about serving the music.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's awesome, man. So Buddha Land, you're in the studio obviously right now. That's the room.
I'm here in the room where your record was born.
That's right, exactly. But you're in Thousand Oaks. Do you want to tell people what Buddha Land is and kind of thing that you're looking for?
Westlake Village is Thousand Oaks adjacent. But yeah, we've been here over 20 years. But we built the studio 10 years ago, 2015, just because we're absolute lunatics and gluttons for punishment. And I had produced this record for Derek Jennings, an EP for him. I had myself and Tara Cocconi were judges on the songwriting competition called Ones to Watch, and the winner was going to get Tara Cocconi, who's Josh Groban's band leader, super accomplished guy, was going to produce an EP for them. Then we ended up having a tie, so I volunteered to produce Derek Jennings. And at the time, I had a downstairs studio in the small bedroom. I had one 2-channel preamp and a couple of microphones. And we did this really lovely lo-fi EP called Bummertown. He's sort of a Elliott Smithy, really wonderful guitar player, really lovely voice, great writer.
Right on.
And we had a great time. But out of that experience, my wife and kid were like, you need your own space. We don't want to hear you, around the clock. And so I always give Derek, by doing that for free, it ended up with the studio. And so that kind of started we talked about moving to another house. We really love our house. We love our location. And so it was actually my wife's idea to do an addition, and we added 1,000 square feet to my house. That's this space.
Yeah.
Which is very sacred, and it was built to be shared. And, over the years, I've finally gotten it completely outfit to where I'm a full 24 track. We can do drums. I've got a piano, organs, and basically, guitars and amps for days.
Right.
And it's a beautiful thing.
You have a wall of magic guitars. Yeah.
Love them. I cherish them. Just like Nigel.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic, man. This room, I just blew out this wall. That the other side of that wall is actually our bedroom, so I can't really record much at night. But I did soundproof that, so that's a floating wall. I did the same kind of thing.
Right.
You're gonna work at home. You got to do something to keep the family together.
Right. And that was the thing too. I have, it's got an artist entrance and stuff like that. It's got a bathroom up here. It's got its own heat and air, so they can't turn on the air conditioning downstairs in the middle of a take, and all of those things. We took into consideration just to keep the flow flowing. So we're very grateful for those decisions. Obviously, we've got the mortgage to show for it, but it was basically like any good artists, we're taking loans out on ourselves throughout our whole lives.
That's right. You got to. It's a long-term game plan. I mean, it's like any business. You're going to constantly be funding things in order to keep proceeding. I think that's what's important for artists to understand. If that's anything what this show kind of becomes for people that are watching that may want to figure out how to get into these kinds of spaces and these roles, is like you have to take a 30,000 foot perspective and think about. We were talking about this with PR. You have to look at the long-term return on what these things. It's not going to be a direct monetary return all the time. I mean, Spotify is almost exclusively advertising at this point. That might change. Hopefully legislation passes to increase how much they have to pay us. But at the same time, for right now and for all intent and purpose, a lot of that is just advertising to get yourself out there in front of people.
Right. And the idea of over time just being known for having a standard.
Right.
We've talked about it before, but my last day job was I worked for Irving Azoff for his first for his label, then for his management company. So I had direct access to icons all the time, and so much. I took so many lessons from that. The main one was there was not a lot of joy at the top. That was a big one. Being around the Eagles for a long, long time, for 10 years, at their homes, at their rehearsals, in the studio, not a ton of levity. They were making, again, 7 figures 20 years ago a night, and so it's a really big thing. But my idea was just, and also I saw so much sort of frivolous spending of, photo shoots and videos and things like that are of course charged to the band later. And so my whole thing was to do major label standard on the indie dime, and that's really what I've been trying to do ever since. Yeah.
No, totally. Well, and you have to. Even as an independent, like just an artist, something I'd appreciate about you, you're running a studio there, but you also run every release like a label would run a release, and I think that's extremely important. That's effectively what's taken me so long, is just getting my ducks in a row, because we wrote my songs, it's just 4 songs, but we wrote them 2.5 years ago, and then it took me like a year to come around to getting ready to record. But then we pulled the trigger pretty quickly. It's taken about a year since then to really get it mastered, which we finally crossed that finish line. Thank God. But in terms of like marketing and promotions, another thing, I've been talking to a couple of different people, like Roy Mitchell Cardenas, he's here, and also Darren. They're both musicians who have, for whatever reason, remained home. A lot of us are dads. You're a dad. Like touring with small children is hard. And even as they get older, it can be difficult to just be away from family. You get comfortable at home, all the reasons that you might want to not do that. But you've consistently gone out and hit fan bases and done real specific, weekend type tours or 5-7 days here and there. And it's funny talking to them. It's like, of course you don't necessarily want to. If a tour comes along, like Darren's the guy that everybody would love to have him on the road with them as their keyboardist, MD, whatever role he wants to do. It's just, you be you and come on the road with me. But unless it's top tier, top of the line, he's getting cake and having it too every day. I doubt he would ever go back out, except to support his own stuff probably. But even that, it doesn't seem like he really wants to get out. But what's your view on touring at this point? You hear people say like it's one of the only ways to continue making money or continue getting your stuff in front of people. I have mixed opinions about that personally, but what's your take on all that, and how do you feel about touring?
Well, it's very layered. Yes. I quit my day job the year my daughter was born, which is 19 years. And so this year makes 20 years that I've been touring internationally. And so in 2005, I went over to Holland for the first time, and I found sort of my people in Holland. And so I've gone back 25 times since, up to a couple times a year. I go to Europe and things but I would always go to Holland. Each time I went back over, I wanted to see a new country. That was not really a business goal so much as a life experience goal. Holland and Germany have risen to the top in terms of my international stuff. And so I do hit them every year. And for the longest time, I would cap my tours, my international tours, at 3 weeks, just because all the strain the family unit can possibly stand. It just, again, my kid was every age between 0 and 19, and I've been over there. And my wife's a school teacher, and a 9-hour time difference, and so you can get really out of sync with the family. Right. And inevitably, the fridge breaks, or the garage floods, or grandpa goes to the hospital, or something.
Yeah, that's always something. Yeah.
While you're away, and that's very hard. I always talk about the werewolf thing. When you're on the road, it's this werewolfy existence where everybody's going to bed and you're getting up, or it's your home is a different time zone, and you're just living on a completely different reality. But what I do love about it, because I am a husband and dad and studio owner and stuff, when I'm on the road, I am there to perform. I am a singular purpose, and that I do love. And then once I've been out for a few weeks and I feel like super ninja laser crusher, it's like, oh, it's a shame to go home now. I'm so good, So that's a trade-off. 2 years ago, I went to a show, see Colin Hay, and we were talking backstage after the show, and he was saying something happens around the 27th show, and I've only had a couple tours that were long enough that I got to that point. Right. But it's so true. It's just the body does the show, and you're just there. Yeah. And so that has to be earned. And so, long answer to your thing, it's always about balance for me. And for the longest time, the longest I was ever out, I think, without coming home was 5 weeks. But for for another 10, 12 years, I would cap it at 3 weeks. Now, kind of since the COVID times, I cap it at 2 weeks. Yeah. And, the other thing, too, is just politically, globally, I had friends that were stuck in England because there was an ash cloud, Grant Langston and his band, right? There was an Icelandic ash cloud or something. Right. So no one could fly for 2 weeks. And those things always I have total separation anxiety, as far as leaving the family unit, and God forbid something gothic happened and I'm stuck on another continent, Right. So I've always sort of wrestled with that. But at the same time, I love performing. The travel part is not my first choice. The flying, I like the travel. I like the destination. Sure, yeah. Travel 4 days are absolute hell. But just trying to find what that balance looks like. I usually tour the East Coast every year in the fall because I like the weather. I do the West Coast in the summer from here to Seattle a couple times, do some South and Midwest things. But my main things in the States are the West Coast and kind of from Nashville to Maine. And I always hit those every year. And then, the Europe thing. And again, this is my 20-year Holland anniversary coming up in the fall. And I'm really torn about this year. I haven't really landed yet. I have a lot of sort of tentative things booked, but I haven't really landed on my sort of thing yet. I'm going to do my regular East Coast and West Coast stuff. But the Europe thing, I have a lot of friends that are on tour in Europe even as we speak, and they're really enjoying it. And I'm always grateful when I get over there, but it's just the sort of trepidatious beforehand stuff. Now, things are so strange in the world. That factors in for sure.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can get something on the books for a few months from now, Bluebird, when you come in town.
Absolutely. That I want to come back. Yeah.
To come and do. Yeah, dude, touring it's something that I've not done since my kids were born, specifically, last 7 years going on 8. I've just not wanted to. I have done little runs here and there. 2017, I promoted a record, went out for a couple of weeks and did some Southeast shows, bounced around between New York and LA and did some stuff when I first moved back to Nashville. But yeah, no, I think that there's definitely a lot of good to it to get out from the performance side, just from a performance. It makes you a better player. It makes you a better communicator when it comes to, putting your stuff out there. This whole world of content driven media, whatever this specifically is, if this can sort of take off and do something for anybody, at least it's putting it out there in the world, is serving a very similar purpose of putting yourself in front of people. And you do great on social media. You're going. I see you on Instagram Live, and I see you putting stuff out there.
I try to. If anything, I could say I've been remiss in the TikTok space. But my biggest issue with that is the presentations that work the most are so samey. I've spent my whole career trying to be an individual, and so trying to do something that feels so samey just doesn't. I have the luxury of being autonomous. Yeah. And if I don't feel authentic, I can't do it. Yeah. But I do really, I don't have a giant fan base, but I've got a lovely fan base, and I try to keep them fed and watered daily. Yeah. And interacted with. And I'm so grateful. A fan is a terrible thing to waste. And so I will never be one to do so. Right. So just trying to figure out what feels authentic to me and make sure that they're seen and attended to. Yeah, but like you were saying, the online game is a skill set, and it's also putting yourself out there. But there is the idea of, particularly as a solo artist, performing in a dark room for whatever tens, 20s, thousands of people alone is really wonderful, really gratifying. And so many times when I am tired and cold and hungry and sad or whatever away from home, and then I have a show, I'm like, oh my God, this is where I need to be tonight. This is where my skills are the most needed. And again, my family has always been supportive. I've just been hard on myself being away. Like I've finally gotten past that. But for years, particularly when my daughter was really little, I used to really crucify myself. Sure. It's all me. But you have to do that to be a good artist. You have to put yourself out there. The only way through is through, and that I think it was Coltrane or whatever. It says, if you don't live it, it won't come out your horn. Totally. I've been alone in Europe with 100 pounds of luggage and a guitar on my back, for 20 years, and then you're just living for that moment on stage. Yeah, and that is really special. And I'm grateful that I stuck it out, and so grateful I kept my family together. That was the other thing too. As a kid who came through so many divorces, like if I had all the success in my career and my family fell under the bus, that would be a fail. That was not my goal. I want it all. I want it all. It's usually low on everything. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, it becomes to speak to your point about, keeping the family unit together. The other side of that is, as an artist, like I know for me, my wife has definitely pointed out plenty of times that if I'm not doing enough music and putting enough creative energy forward in my life in general, it's bad for the whole family. So I think that's one of the things that also sort of helps with a family, especially a spouse that understands, a partner that understands that this is so much a part of who we are as individuals, who you are as an individual. Like absolutely, they kind of have to be okay with that side of who you are, because it really is. It's not just a choice to go out and have fun and go on tour and do whatever it is that you want to do. My wife goes out and parties with her friends way more often than I ever even think to call a friend. So it's important, I think, from a mental health perspective and for all the other obvious reasons. Like this, it's very much a part of being this kind of person. Yeah. And I fully appreciate that about you. I mean, something that as a friend and also as an artist to collaborate with, just watching what you're up to and what you're doing and how you're doing it is really inspiring. I have to say, because it's you're kind of hitting all the and as what they call it, solopreneur or autonomous feature, it's all up to you to make those decisions to put yourself forward.
There's no help coming.
Yeah.
I have so many friends that are genius artists, but they're just pissed sitting at home waiting for the world to come beat down their door. Right. Unfortunately, that rarely happens.
It rarely happens.
Even in the 60s, 70s, 80s, bands that we all got to know, someone spent $1 million and a lot of meetings and whatever trying to figure out how to take them to the market. Yeah. Just now we're just much more saturated. So the idea of consistency and quality control, and the main thing is just having a standard. And at the same time, I do go out a lot. I go see my friends play. I'm always in the mix. I host things here at the studio. So I really want to feed the ecosystem, and the same thing with having real musicians play on my records rather than me playing everything or in the box shit. I really like, again, to have Darren in the studio, master player. Yeah. And so the idea of if we do something in the vein of this and then seeing how he responds to that prompt or whatever, that's really where the magic comes. And that's, you know, my wife, she thought I would be a record producer before I ever thought I would. And that whole thing too, it's the same every time you and I as solo artists put out a record, it's like giving birth. It's a big process. Right. But with everybody that I produce, it's the same, except now I'm married to somebody for a year of my life or whatever. And so my wife has got to hold my hand through all these ups and downs. If someone's having an existential crisis that I'm working with, right. You know, it's a lot, but I really do love it. And I have such respect for artists. I know how hard it is, but I'm just always urging everybody to like be your best version of you. That's all you can do. We can't compare ourselves to others. But you have to get up in the morning, particularly if you're a full-time artist, you have to get up in the morning and put something on the board or there's nothing on the board. Right. You know, the idea that I've been married through this whole time where I haven't had a steady paycheck in 19 years, it's preposterous. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. You used to say, quit your day job. No, that's terrible advice in 2025. Yeah. You know, it's insane. But I think just by hustle and standard and networking and things like this, the universe has kept me going, and you know, I just want to be worthy. I have a lot of gifts in my life. I have a lot of support, and my life is really abundant and cool, and I just want to be worthy of it. And to me, that means work ethic, like crazy. Yeah. You know? Yeah.
Well, and I think, and circling back around, so like, you know, I think pointing out all of this as a preface is better than like starting with the background. But I would like to talk about your, you know, some of your first tours and kind of how you started getting in front of people when you first went out there. Because I know you toured with Jewel and did a lot of really cool things. But before we get into that, just to reiterate what you're saying, like 2025 is not, you know, here forward. I don't know what it's going to look. I have small kids. You have a 19-year-old daughter. Like, what the hell does the world look like for them 15 years from now? Like, I have no idea. But, and especially as artists, like coming into this space, just knowing how much it takes right now, us, you know, both of us being people who've worked with labels and done different things, it's, good Lord, it's such a different space. And you do have to have a business mindset, I think, about the whole thing. You can't just be an aloof artist and to your point, wait for things to come to you. You really, one of the best pieces of advice, I'll just finish on this point. One of the best pieces of advice that I ever got from an investor that I work with, the guy's got like 51 different K1s, which is probably an exaggeration, but probably not too far off. The guy has a ton of partnerships and a ton of bars that he's opened. And he's a old real estate guy. But I was talking to him about like Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because I have friends that were getting in all of that during the whole advent of the bro podcast mania is still happening to this day. And I just couldn't get behind it. I was like, Alan, what do you like? What do you do every day? We're talking about. He's like, dude, just get up and do shit. He's like, I just get up and I do shit. That's how people make money. That's how people succeed. You gotta get up. You gotta put yourself out there. You just gotta do stuff, because otherwise, it's never gonna happen. Yeah. Which I think is the best advice. I think that's probably the best advice you can give anybody that will stand the test of time. You know what I mean?
think so too. Yeah, you have to hustle, and you know, I think by most artists don't really operate beautifully in the real world,
right?
You know, which is fine. I'm always like, that's fine.
We're socially awkward people.
If this is everything, you know, show up.
Yeah,
show up. Yeah, don't be late. Don't be a jackass. Don't forget your shit like that. When I see artists shooting themselves in the foot all the time, I'm like, man, be a complete moron everywhere else, but be a shark over here if you want to have a prayer.
Yeah, I think Mark Maron, who was talking about it. Maybe it was. I listened to a bunch of these comedy podcasts because they're very uplifting. I don't know if you listen to comedy podcasts, but like Dave and Dana, the whole Fly on the Wall. It's probably that one, because both of those guys were in the the Transylvania movies that they're in? You know, Hotel Transylvania, the kids movies. So anyway, they were talking about how Miley Cyrus, I think, got booked to be the daughter under Adam Sandler in that film.
Right.
But during the first meeting, the first like table read that they had, Miley was late, was like an hour late, and everybody's getting uncomfortable. And it's a big operation. It's Adam Sandler. It's all the biggest names, Hotel Transylvania. And she shows up late and she does the read, but before she even showed up, I think they already had an alternative in Selena Gomez, and they basically were giving her a call saying, you have it if you want it, just because Miley was late to the thing. And that's kind of how it appeared to everybody. You can't be Miley Cyrus even and show up late, and that's okay.
I agree.
You got to be there.
Particular punctuality is among my religions. I've had people that had a meeting with me at the studio, and they're, they show up an hour late. I'm like, you get one.
Yeah.
Like, you only get the one.
Yeah.
Punctuality is same thing. Getting into, you were asking about the question of touring. So I was in a rock band, a few rock bands in the 90s, and I got to work really closely with some really big producers. Richie Podler was like a mentor. He passed away a couple of years ago. His biggest claims to fame were like Born to Be Wild and Three Dog Night and stuff like that. And they had a beautiful studio here in Malibu. And I worked with Richie Zito, who'd worked with Heart and Cheap Trick and a bunch of cool stuff. And I actually worked with Max Norman, who did the first Ozzy record and recorded Randy Rhoads and stuff. So, all those experiences. And when I first came to LA, I was just going to be a guitar player. I had no game plan. And then eventually started writing songs. Then by my late 20s, I fronted my first band, which was a rock band. And then when that band sort of ended, it was around the time of Grant Lee, Buffalo, Elliott Smith. There was sort of, the people were turning down and the songwriter movement was happening. And so I was early in the hotel cafe scene and stuff like that. And so I had my first solo acoustic tour between here and Seattle. And around that same time, you mentioned Jewel. I got a one-off opening for Jewel. And she really liked me and said, I loved your show. I'd love to have you. And I'm like, I'm here for you any old time. And so she took me on a tour, a Southern tour. And though I was doing solo acoustic 1 to 3,000, and I went over, I sold a lot of records. It was really eye-opening and encouraging. And at the same time, that was the first time I went to Europe that year. And I started to get some licensing and stuff. And then by, I guess, 2006, the licensing thing was pretty well. I had Warner Brothers that was kind of really liking my record, came to see me at the hotel. And it was Tom Wally, who would also work with Seal. He said something about my banter or something, which I took umbrage with. I'm like, my banter's legend. And I just okay, at that moment, I'm like, I'm going to be independent. I'm just going to be independent. Yeah. And I also knew artists that had toured with Jewel previous to me, Joe Firstman, for example. He was on Atlantic. And I was generally making more than artists that were signed to Atlantic on doing that size venue. I owned everything. I didn't have much overhead. And so that was just sort of my North Star that I've sort of kept going ever since. And so going over to Europe for the first time was really eye-opening and fun. And so, I always have full band records and I do West Coast full band stuff. And I have some amazing Dutch guys that play with me. But the Jewel thing was the main takeaway was if you can put on a compelling one-person show, you can survive, Right. And so, since then, every coffee house to theaters to amphitheaters, I've just tried to keep the standard high and keep putting out records. And, it's funny, I just saw a review this week of my most recent record, and they were saying the record's so great and a little bit knocking me because they're not coming thick and fast enough for them. It's like my last record was 2019,
Right.
But yeah, I produced 10 in the interim, by the way.
Right.
But it's just unlike, what Daniel Eck, our overlord, says about content is cheap and easy to make, real records are not, they're time consuming, and you've got to pay your musicians and your mixers, and, it's a big job. So, the touring thing over the years, I was really fortunate to get on some really big tours. After Jewel, I went out with Seal, and that was, Jewel was 1 to 3,000, Seal was 3 to 10,000, and then I went to Styx and Yes, and we were 10 to 25,000, and I was solo acoustic for all of them. And each level of that was an eye-opening experience and fear and loathing and ultimately triumph and things. So I just try to be, doing those tours, I had a lot of revelations along the way. If I made a clam on a big stage or something, I would have a, complete meltdown internally.
Right, of course.
And I just like, hey, jackass, it's rock and roll. It's not a recital. Jewel would, like, if she screwed up a song, she'd just like, I don't want to play that. She didn't give a shit, you know, and that was way more rock and roll, And so that's the thing too, just trying to stay in the moment. And over the years, more recently, I just think that I see what I do, what we do is like an act of service, and a lot of people like need it, know. And so
I agree.
I'm here to serve them, And so that fills me with purpose too. I try to use the microphone for good. I try to write real shit, and the universe keeps coming through, and so that's where we is.
100%. Yeah, I have a quote written down by Jerry Seinfeld. Don't give them what they want. If they knew what they wanted, they wouldn't have to pay for it. You give people what they need. But the flip side of that is that people really don't know what they need. They really don't know what they want until they hear it, until they see it. And that is sort of the beautiful thing about getting out and performing. I was telling Darren about this, and I think I told you about it too, but I played 3 or 4 hours at this little venue that some friends of ours opened, a little bar in Boaz, Alabama, just middle of nowhere, rural Alabama. And of course they're asking me for the latest country hits. And I think someone asked for a Hank Williams Jr. song, and I was able to sort of learn that between sets in the office and come out and do that with a Willie Nelson tune I already knew. But obviously that's not what I do at all. It was really uncomfortable for me. I haven't played that long of a set, and I don't even know that I'm in any condition to be doing anything that late at night anyway these days. But yeah, like working into that, working through that, just being there for that and really trying to be present, I was realistically messing up in just about every song because I'm playing material I'm just not playing that often at all. But to be present and just sort of try to really inject yourself into it is such a big part of what's important about being a performer and being a musician and being in service of those listeners, those people that. Something that you were talking about, speaking of what people need and what people want, the industry, I've always described it as a dog eating at its own tail. It's almost like there's no tail left anymore. It just constantly is regurgitating a lot of the same. Yeah, especially from a business perspective and mentality, from a bottom line perspective, there's almost virtually no A&R in terms of artist development anymore. I do see it happening with some artists, but it's rare to really see someone in true development anymore. I was talking to somebody who is an A&R at a publishing company here in Nashville at one of the plug and play events you and I both been to. So one of those Durango, expo kind of things. And I forget his name, but he's based here. But he was talking about maybe it was him, I don't know, whoever it was, but they were talking about bedroom producers. You don't want to look like or sound like a bedroom producer, which a lot of us are producing records literally from home these days.
Phineas, right? And Billie Eilish, the quintessential, the Bon Iver record,
Right. Yeah.
Just again, have a standard. It's true. You don't have to spend all your money on microphones and preamps. Yeah. But you have to put the work in and have a standard. That's really good. Yeah.
Oh yeah, 100%. Billy Hume was talking about plug and play events, and he's like, man, I had no idea what to expect from this, but I was sitting there listening. I get through a couple of songs. I'm like, man, this is really good stuff. This is, I'm kind of getting into it, and then I get another 4 or 5 up to 10 songs in, and I realized like there's something about all of these songs, and he realizes they all sound exactly the same. Like there's no different sounds coming out of anything, no matter how different the song is. Right. And he sort of explained that as, we're all using the same effects and plugins and systems to process all of this, emulators and whatever else. Of course, he's got a room full of, he's got like 3 different distressors from different age periods. And he's got, like real actual, outboard gear. And we always talk about that. We talked about that, like getting real true tape sound from a guy who does a 1/4-inch print for that master, which is what we ended up going with. Any way that you can create like a unique process for that sound is one way to sort of avoid sounding like anybody and everybody else. But also it is so easy to just throw together a master with ozone these days it'd be nice. I've started using an Abbey Road emulator that I found. I don't know if it's UA or somewhere, but just anywhere that you can get when you have to do a quick master for a sync project, a brief or whatever. It's nice to just have some different alternatives to make these things sound a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, but what I was getting at before is like the whole, like they frown upon the bedroom producer idea and that thing. But then again, they need you to be putting out 20 songs every 2 weeks or whatever the hell the metric is just to meet the content standards of today's market. Right. And what's crazy about that is like, it feels like there's no real context or consideration put around the algorithms that are feeding a lot of the content that we're seeing. I was listening to a podcast just the other day. They were talking about where they feel AI is going to go with Meta as they get into it. Meta, Facebook brands, because they're kind of behind the 8 ball on it. Of course, all they have to do is go buy somebody else's and they're ahead of the curve again. But the point being, I sort of already see this when I get on social media, which is very rarely these days. But when I get on there and you look at that feed, they talk about, and actually there are apps that will do this. They'll generate content for you. There's guys that promote, you never even have to be in front of the camera and you can have a totally successful YouTube channel because AI will create all of this for you. Having it all be based on that algorithm and what it's seeing people want based on the viewership. Again, it's like it's not creating for the purpose
the opposite of art.
It's completely the opposite of art.
Yeah. And so I saw the Frank Zappa documentary a month or two ago, and he was talking about any creative decision that's based on financial things. It is not a creative decision; it's a business decision. Right. Right. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but for me, I really do strive to preserve artistic autonomy, and so again, I can get a sample of a shaker that sounds unbelievably godly with a microphone that was at Abbey Road and things like that, but my fucked up shaker is mine or whatever. My tambourine, my guitar, whatever. Those are my sounds. Yeah. I used a noise machine, a sleep machine the other day and made a pad out of it, nice. And like years ago, I was recording my 4th record with Billy Moeller, and we had like a saucepan full of nuts and bolts, and we poured it slowly, as a drop of a bridge, just like literally trying 100%. Stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's that exploration and that thing. And again, we were like stomp clapping, whatever. 15 years ago, where now every song's got a chain and a stomp clap, but we did it with our feet and our hands, and that's exhausting, by the way. But we did it the old-fashioned way, and so we had our own thing. And so to your point, I've done writers' camps in Europe. All these kids come in with the laptop, and they've got the same risers and shit, and it's like everything is so samey. And again, they're chasing somebody else's thing, and I don't blame any for it, but I have a lot of friends that stop, putting themselves out there as artists to write specifically for sync or things like that. And I think that's great. And they more times than not make more money than a full-time artist. But at the end of the day, they're cranking out sausages, you know, and not making art so much. It's artistic sausages, but it's artisanal sausages. But I just spent some time with Joseph Arthur. We did a couple shows together. I've known him forever and really respected. He talk about an artist. He's a painter and a performer, and he will loop shit on stage and paint a picture in real time, on stage. And he's done a million records, discovered early by Peter Gabriel and Lou Reed, but he's just always done it his way. And I just really that's what I respect the most is people that are, like in terms of artists, like people that really just try to be the best versions of themselves. And we, over time, we do, we can take hard left turns. That's why, for the longest time when I would be written up as singer-songwriter, I always thought that was sort of a sad term to me. And I always think of like Bowie and John Lennon, just because I see them as just solo artists. They're genreless. They can do whatever they want. They can go big or small or dancey or not or whatever, and that's where I like to live. I just want to create the music that's coming, and I don't have to put a box around it, and that might make it harder to figure out which festival to put me in, or if I'm not Americana enough for this or that. I could zero fuss. I give
Yeah, it
zero.
doesn't matter.
I just do me.
Yeah, Darren, I don't think he got the joke. And maybe it wasn't that funny, but he was talking about a new Grammy category for jazz alternative, I think is what he called it.
Yeah.
Jazz alternative, and it's a new Grammy category. It's a new. I don't know if it's a genre you could pick with a DSP, with a distributor necessarily, like Americana is now. But it didn't take that long for Americana to become that one of those things. And I love that. I love that there are these new boxes and new niches we can fit into as musicians, as artists. It's really hard to figure out where my stuff fits. We've had that conversation many times. That even those 4 songs we did, it's sort of across the spectrum of a lot of different things. But yeah, it's jazz alternative. I was like, what is jazz alternative? Is that like a new term for Americana? Does it just fit in that bucket? Like, what would you clearly it is jazz, and you would just call it jazz, or even in some cases world music. Something like we talked about Kamasi, because Kamasi Washington was one of the guys that brought us together. I would put a lot of his stuff in world music categories. I don't know if it is, because he really is just like a straight jazz composer. But yeah, he some of his early demos that I remember him showing me back in the day were very like hip hop, world influenced hip hop with jazz view, like super cool and very similar to the kind of stuff that he's doing now. But yeah, crossing genres and reaching across those boundaries is all about, even if you're coming from a place of replicate, I think everybody's repeating what we love and what we hear. Everybody's trying to, grab that Paul Simon sound from that one record that we loved, Kodachrome or whatever it was, and then apply that to something new, some new take. And I'd love, even though, you're writing and creating all the time, and I'm just like you, trying to strive for whatever's going to be unique about that project and that sound for me. If it sounds a little bit like a thing, I'm going to go reference that record, and I'm not afraid to just throw it in there personally, because I know at this point in my career, and I think you're the same as an artist, it's going to become unique kind of no matter what. Also, but you sort of have to go through that phase, those stages of copying and trying to find where you sit and where you fit.
Yeah, in that space. I think for me, just when I was a kid, my parents separated when I was a little kid, and I was just left in my grandparents' basement with records. So music was just such a big thing. I always say the whoopee, the blankie, from a very young age. But like, I'm still such a music fan. If I'm not playing music, I'm listening to music all the time. So as a creative, as a producer, like if someone comes in and they're like, oh, they're a young person in 2025. And I'm like, oh, this Cyndi Lauper MTV thing, like, let's look at that drum beat or whatever. Yeah. So I have a lot of things to pull from different eras, just because I've just like studied popular music for so long, just through the osmosis. A lot of different, back in the day when MTV was new, it was such an open playing field, from like Judas Priest to Chris de Burgh to Thompson Twins to whatever. It was just all over the road. Just good songs found their way, and so I love that. And that's why if I want to pull from this or that, I feel I have carte blanche to do it, just because it's all just creativity. And those are things that touched me for whatever reason, and so they're in me somehow. Yeah. But for other artists that are sort of trying to figure out what their brand looks like, I'm like, oh, you kind of really, I told you I produced Senya Sargent, and all I heard was a voice on Zoom. I didn't have pre-released music, and so I was like Concrete Blonde, Roy Orbison, somehow putting those two together, the grandness of that with the edge of this, and so just being open to all things, and like I said, I just listen to music. I have infinite playlists of disparate music all the time. I'm at the gym or in the car. I'm just constantly listening and just kind of filing things away. That's a neat drum approach, or what's that reverb? Yeah. You have to be a good listener for sure. It was different because we were trying to keep it as real and sort of honest and minimalist as possible, and even though it took a minute to get it, mixed and mastered, like the meat of it was captured really quickly, which was sort of impetus there.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good sign. Like, there was nothing to change about how we did it. You know, I've tracked records that we had to completely retrack down the road. You know, there was nothing to redo. It was all just making sure and going through different mixers. That whole process was, at least for me, was sort of trying to find the thing that was really going to not bastardize that sound that we had. And I kind of thought like maybe it's tape from the beginning, but you know, whatever it was, like you know, Seth Horan, I talked to Darren, but I didn't say his last name in the last one. Seth, I think it's Seth Horan is how you say his last name, Horan. Brilliant, you know, and I've worked with him for so many years, but I'm just glad that, like, you know, he's the kind of guy that just understands this is the message, this is where we're headed, and he knows the route, you know. You just
He was the guy. And you know, it's another thing I always talk about with, you know, artists that I produce that obviously aren't as accomplished as yourself or whatever, but like the process is the process. It's like, for me, the whole making records thing is like Frogger. It's like no, yes, there it is, no, there it is. And so you just have to keep your eyes open for when it's there it is. With that, like, we went through a couple of potential mixers, and then with him, it was just a phone call. And I'm like, he's the guy. Before he touched a knob, I'm like, I am so secure that this guy's going to crush it. And he was just wonderful. And it basically took our rough mix and just shined it up. And that's all we wanted, because we were happy to begin with.
Yeah, he was the whoopee. He was the blanket we found.
And again, I got to go down and the last session we did together just to, you know, land it, and it was just super fun and easy, and he just understands, you know, if I have an idea why I want it, and he knows what EQ to, you know, the path of least resistance to get the end zone, you know.
100%.
Yeah,
no, I'm so glad. Well, and I want to have a little bit of like material to sort of go alongside that, where we explain a little bit about that process. So I've been trying to figure out how to end these. I've done recorded 2, and I've got like 5 on the books. And so before we got together, one of the things I did while meditating last week, I was like, okay, I need to really just like lose all my ideas about where this is going to go. Just like you're saying, play the Frogger game and just be like, all right, there's a lot of directions this could go, but I wanted to create a little bit of a through line. And what's similar of these interviews to a project I've already done, the Home on the Road documentary, is just musicians chatting about music. But there's a specific question I asked everybody in that documentary that tied all of those together. So I'm going to ask you that, but there's also a couple other questions that lead up to that. First, I guess let's talk about what's next for you, because you have another project that you're working on.
Yes, I'm producing 2 very disparate singles right now. One is a country artist that I met at the hotel about 6 weeks ago named Kate Morris, who's just amazing. And I just thought she just, like I said, I thought she had the fire in the belly. And so we did a single together. I'm working on that right now. And then there's an artist named Sadie Jasper, who's up Central Coast, California. And we wrote on Zoom some months ago a beautiful song about her son, but she's got a really haunting, deep voice for a little teeny thing. She's got this very deep voice, but there's also sort of an edge and a sadness to it. And so it's sort of a dark ambient ballad for her kid that's really rad. And so I went up last weekend and played electric guitars and some EBO stuff and ambient stuff and acoustic stuff, and she played on a grand piano. And so just kind of finishing those up first, and then I already have the songs written, but I'm moving into recording my next record, which I don't think I'll release this year, but I want to try to put it down quite quickly and really honest. And so again, when we were writing, you know, in that period of the 21, 22s, I had this sort of writing boon on Zoom. And so I co-wrote 85 songs in 1 year. And, you know, I was writing, of course, by myself too. But so I've just never been so flush with tunes. But this, you know, and there were a lot of songs even then that I had been kind of stashing a while because they were sort of political, you know, or even topical. Right. And I just thought I didn't want to release them to put further negativity out in the world at that time. Even in the 2016, 17s, I was dubious on the future politically and stuff. But so like a Bob Marley Redemption songs, things like this. I wanted to just kind of filter out these songs that I thought had the most potent message to have ultra stripped and recorded live. And that's just sort of the mission statement. I'm going to have a really, really honest record. Again, so much of what I do is performing live solo. I might have a little accompaniment, but I want to have everything going down live. So I'm basically just sort of in pre-production for that. And then again, I have some West Coast touring, and then fall, and then fall East Coast, and then it remains to be seen whether I get to Europe at the end of the year or not. But all the while, I'm also actively getting more video content on myself, like real lit shot shit. That's
good.
Performances. Yeah.
Perfect.
So there's always a lot of work to be done. That's for sure.
That's for damn sure. Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited to hear it, man. And I hear you. I wrote a couple of charged political songs, the 2016, 17 era. And I just recently did another one, and I might put that one out. Just the whole. I'm of the same mind, but I also think that right now is a time where things have gotten so. We talked about this recently. But yeah, it's just so charged, and I don't want to add fuel to the fire. The song is about conversation, and you being one of the other questions I had was do you practice mindfulness? We've talked about this, your beliefs and things.
Yeah, I've been a practicing Buddhist for 27 years.
Right.
And so I really equate so much of the fortune in my life, the rhythm in my life, and the gratitude and sort of awareness and the compassion. I have so many friends that are artists that, are literally every spectrum of the mental health thing from time to time. And some of them are really big, successful artists, and they're in the worst straits. So I spend a lot of time with friends, keeping tabs on my homies that are beautiful artists, but turbulent minds. Yeah. And that's a big part of it too. And I think, again, in terms of my own sort of mindfulness, in recent years, in the last 5 years, I think I hit another level of, in the Buddhist practice, I practice, which is called Nichiren Buddhism. But basically the impetus for doing it is an unshakable happiness despite external stuff, that which is a good goal for all us being on earth in the first place.
Right.
But also just sort of compassion for those around me, and just the idea that yesterday is gone, tomorrow is unknown. Just be grateful with today, and if you put your focus there, it does take a lot of the heat away from the things you're tripping on all the time.
Right.
And also the idea of not begrudging our lives or not being mad at anybody. I haven't held no grudges. I don't entertain regret. I took all that off of myself. And I really think that has made such a huge difference. My life, my marriage, I'm really, really happy. And I just want to take my art to people and touch people's hearts. And that's what I will do the rest of my life. And at the same time, I'm really tight with my kid. She just finished her first year of college. And so, I'm so grateful for her relationship and the idea that I'm, again, having a musical career and a family simultaneously. Not everybody has that. It's a big gift, and I never take it for granted, And so I want just as accountable on every sort of aspect of my life,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's beautiful, man. Well, and I think it reflects in your choices and just knowing you for the years that I've known you. Yeah, as a friend, I appreciate that kind of mindset. Speaking of just mental health and going through changes and everything else, there's so much that I've been through these last few years, and some of it was a direct result of setting music aside in my life to try to figure out how to be a dad. For me personally, that was one thing I really wanted to kind of center myself on, and I realized I can't be a good dad until I continue to be a happy me. It does reflect so much on how you treat other people if you're not being consistent with your own needs. I
saw a thing just this morning, and it was saying the opposite of depression is expression.
Is expression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People that we have to. If we can't, then we can spiral very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt that one.
Mental stuff in our game is off the charts, and I've had my share, you know. And so again, to find that place of a sustainable happiness and purpose and stuff like that is something that once I kind of figure it, obviously it's a lifelong thing to keep tabs on, but once you kind of achieve that, then you really want to fight to spread it.
Yeah.
You know, and so again, the idea of so many artists that are trying to compare themselves to others, be it their socials, their numbers, their this, their that, like, you know, it's like counting another man's gold. That's another Buddhist, you know, term, you know, can't do it.
Yeah.
And so all we can try to do is just show up for ourselves and our loved ones and our friends, and you know, at the same time, turn off the television and things like this that are just saying the sky's falling 24/7, because it's pretty dubious out there. But I walk outside with my dog, the sun's shining, I can still get Thai food. You know, Chris Pierce and I are very dear friends, you know, and just like we're always talking about it, that to be men of a certain age, they can go have sushi at 3:00 in the afternoon on any given Tuesday. We've kind of already won. You know, and I don't take that for granted, you know, but at the same time, we both show the hell up to work and try to do the job
there for it. No, 100%. All of that resonates with me 100%. Yeah. I mean, I've been, anyway, whatever. I'm going to move on. I've got 2 questions for you. Who's a hero for you?
First one into my brain was Neil Young. And I met Neil, you know, last year, which was really special. And you know, the whole thing about don't meet your heroes, you know, I did, and he was wonderful. But you know, I have a number, but in terms of just artistically speaking, you know, because usually the first thing in my brain is always The Rock. You know, Neil, the main reason he has been such sort of a source and a touchstone for me is because, again, he's always been true to the muse. And it's just like famously when he was on tour with Stills, you know, they were doing a Stills Young tour and he wasn't feeling it. And he's like, you know, sent him a, you know, telegram or something that said, eat a peach. And just like told them, you know, they're driving down the eastern seaboard and tells the bus driver, turn right, meaning we're heading to California.
Yeah, we're going back home.
Like, I'm not feeling this, you know. And so just the idea for me over the years, if I had like a close friend in my band and stuff like that, that might not have been cutting it for whatever reason. He can play the stuff, but then it's time to make a record and he's not bringing, you know, then I have to, again, it's like Neil, what would Neil do? He would serve the music, you know, and also be true to himself despite trends or this or external shit. He's always done his thing. And so that is, and also the main thing is, you know, when I saw him when I was 19 years old at the Greek, I might have told you that, but I was a total long-haired metal shredder at the time. Of course, I was aware of him. I went to his concert, but I'd never seen a solo acoustic versus 9,000 people and cried my eyes out before. And it was just so stinking powerful and so pure, so like honest. That really became a North Star for me. And then, you know, whatever, 10, 15 years later, I played solo acoustic at the Greek and I told the story about that. And then I met Neil last year and I told him, I'm like, man, I have to tell you, I saw you at the Greek solo acoustic and it changed the trajectory of my life. And so, you know, over the years, and then also, you know, I met him after seeing his movie. He put out a movie called Harvest Time in total Neil fashion. He shot it 50 years ago, sat on it for 50 years. But it's the making of Harvest in his barn on his ranch in like 1972 or whatever. It's the most golden California utopia you've ever seen. You know, I'm there with my wife, like the opening shot is like golden hour shot on film, 1972 with a Jeep with like 5 hippies and a dog. And I'm crying 30 seconds in, you know, because it's just so, I'm California, I'm acoustic guitars, I'm steel guitars, I'm golden hour. You know, and all those things just really factor into how my life played out. You know, I was born in California, but I only lived here for 2 months as a baby or something. But when I came back, I just really connected with it so much. And again, just the idea of using the microphone for good, things like that. He's done that forever. He and Cat Stevens, of course, is another one who really does sort of walk the walk and makes beautiful music, but also uses his, you know, his audience, his reach to say, you know, important things. And so, Neil is the top of the list.
Neil's the top of the list. Yeah, I get it. All right. What does success mean to you? And this is the question, just to preface it, this is the question I asked everybody across the country. And I don't know if I've ever shown you pieces of the Home on the Road documentary, but it's on Tubi, actually. You can check it out.
Oh, I've seen it. It's wonderful.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I saw it.
But yeah, that's the reason I asked that question. At the time, I was kind of going through a struggle of my own design, trying to figure out like what was my place in the mix of all of this. Because you, as an artist, well, one thing that I struggled with at different points was just ensuring that I was integral to my craft and what I wanted it to be, versus, what everybody every day of the week tells you and shows you it should be. So yeah, it was like redefining what that meant for me and going out and just asking everybody, like, this is a question we should be asking ourselves. What does success mean to you? So however that frames it for you, but that's where it comes from.
Well, yeah, I think the first word that came into my mind when you asked that was just happiness, to be happy.
Yeah.
That alone is a success, because not everybody can find that. And then, in terms of my personal life, I'm so grateful and blessed. I've been with my wife, 25 years. We've been married 23 years. And she's a school teacher, and she married a rock and roller. I was Les Paul and Marshalls when we met,
Yeah.
And so just like for a person that sort of understands my brain and my needs and my desires, and I can be very excitable. If I'm on the path to something, I can get, if I can get frustrated quickly, if something's not moving fast enough or things like that. But she completely understands and supports me, and to have a partner in life. Again, I come from so many divorces. My parents, 7 marriages between my 2 parents. So to like break that cycle and have really a healthy, sustainable relationship with my wife. And then the other is with my kid. Like, my relationship with my daughter is rad. And when she was a baby, again, with my wife's blessing, I quit my day job with a new baby. Like, who does?
Yeah.
And so that afforded me the luxury of all kinds of quality time. I was a stay-at-home dad until she went to, kinder care or whatever, preschool things. And I would take her to school, pick her up from school her whole life when I wasn't on the road. And so that cemented a beautiful relationship with her. And of course, she knows, every bit of sex and drugs, rock and roll lore I could possibly give her. And now that's just made her such a grounded, cool teenager. Just like for every bonehead mistake you can make, I have a friend that did it 10 times.
Yeah.
That jumped off the bridge. He took that, they had a baby at 17, all the cautionary tales. I've never sugarcoated it at all. So, I feel successful that I have a beautiful relationship with my child. Like, for example, my father and my sister haven't spoken for 30 years. Like, that shit is all around me. And then again, like, in terms of the like you were saying, the idea of success that's sort of thrust upon us, financially, am I a millionaire from my art? No. Are my needs met? Is my life abundant? Yeah. I'm just to be happy, to be grateful, to have love in your life and to do your passion. Like, that feels like a success to me. I would love more financial security, as most of my artistic friends would. But like, the other thing is I'd never begrudge my life. I never begrudge my career, what it's not. Like, I am totally in a place where I just want to sustain where I am. My mission statement is always, I want to headline theaters whenever I want. Occasionally I do. I don't do it every night. And that's another thing in terms of the norms of the day. The idea so many people famous is being successful. Like, that's, again, working for Irving, I was around so many iconic people, and I don't see fame as a destination whatsoever. I've never got in for fame. I want to be great. I want to be a great artist that's respected. I want my bills paid. I want to play theaters when I want.
Yeah.
But there's nothing I'm waiting on. There's nothing external that I need to be happy with myself. And that feels like a success too. So, just to stay in this place of gratitude and presence and keep my standard high, and the spirits keep putting songs in my head, I'm just going to keep putting them out there.
Yeah. Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for doing this.
Yeah. My pleasure.
Hopefully we'll be able to introduce you to some new people and keep you back out there on the road, putting records out.
Doing the thing.
Yeah. Doing the thing.
I appreciate you checking that out. We're at episode number 6 this week. I am pretty thrilled to have kept this going. I've got a lot of episodes in the can, so be on the lookout. Definitely releasing this EP here pretty soon, and a lot of other music as well. We're still releasing a bunch of ambient stuff on Drishti Records. True Source Entertainment is picking up steam, and we're going to be putting out some other people's projects, not just my own. It's going to be great. I'm super excited about everything that's happening. Publishing, labels, I mean, the whole thing. It's a whole venture of its own. Anyway, thank you so much for checking it out, and I hope that I will see you in the next one.